So we'll just start off just super easy. Who are you? What do you do?
Okay, my name is Stuart Mackay. I'm the owner of Pedigree Painting, a residential and commercial painting company. Been in business for about 2 years now, and just been dealing with some exponential growth through COVID.
Yeah. And how big is your team? Like, what is your, just sort of for somebody that's listening to this, what does the
Yeah,
company look like and how does that work?
yeah. So we'll fluctuate anywhere between about 15 staff at any given time, down to as low as I think the lowest we've been this year is about 9 or 10. That fluctuates based on seasonality. We also have a project manager in place. So as a management team, it's just me and one other project manager, and then the rest of the guys are out on the field. So three teams of three. Right now it's two teams of three and a team of two.
Great. And what have been some of the bigger struggles for you in your role? Like what were you challenged with before we actually started working together?
Yeah. My biggest challenges, I think, was the speed at what we grew. I started to get imposter syndrome. I realized there was an opportunity there that when you don't grow up with not many opportunities, and when an opportunity, you know, comes like that, it's hard to not put everything into it. So I was finding it really difficult to split my time between personal and business. I felt guilty if I wasn't in the business. I felt guilty if I was in the business for 16 hours and not checking in on my fiance. I'm constantly playing these loops in my head about how can we get married next year? Like, I'm never around. Like, what's this saying at the start of our marriage? What's it going to get like? I felt like I wasn't present anywhere. Even when I was at work, I wasn't fully present. When I was at home, I wasn't fully present. Excuse me. Which just meant that my fiance wasn't getting the best of me. I wasn't getting the best of me. My business wasn't getting the best of me. My employees, my customers, no one was getting the best of me. So that's when I heard your podcast. And I said, okay, let's just hit the brakes and reassess what's going on here. And that's when you and I got to know one another.
Yeah. What, so just before we switch gears, what was the space like when you were stretched so thin and everybody wasn't getting the best, like your best version of yourself wasn't showing up? Like, what was that like to be in that space?
I almost felt like you were getting starved of oxygen a little bit. Like there would be times where everything would feel hazy. You get that migraine feeling, everything's hazy. The lines are blurred. You can't make, executive decisions, as I would call them. There was also other feelings at the times when things got really bad, and working with you, and I know people that might be listening to this might not understand what a victim is, but one of my saboteurs was the victim, so I felt like no one understood me, and I'm getting dragged in all these directions, which again was hard because, as I said before, we had this opportunity in front of us, and now I'm feeling like a victim because of the opportunity. So there was just so much conflicting information, so much stuff I never knew how to deal with. And the feeling was just lonely, hazy, and a place that I wouldn't like anyone to be in, especially when they're building something great.
Yeah. And what was the downstream effects of that on your team and your fiance? What did they notice?
Yeah, so my fiance really noticed it because I'm aware of her love language, and her love language is like small acts of kindness. And I didn't have the mental capacity to think about bringing in a bottle of wine or a packet of Skittles, um, which something I used to always do. And for the employees, I would say Demi knew that we were going to go through this. She understood. She knew it was in front of us. She could see the big picture. So she was a lot more patient with the employees. However, it was constantly putting fires out, because what I realized was they were actually my personality was infectious. So when I was running at high stress, and then they were coming in for a meeting and they see me at high stress, well, that doesn't give them much confidence. So there was actually one time, 2 weeks after I started working with you, I walked into a job site and I had my supervisor, 55-year-olds, and a young 55-year-old male, young 25-year-old female, screaming at each other, polar opposite, like neck and neck, screaming at one another. And I'm like, wow, where did this all come from? And it all started from when I started to snowball downhill as well. That's when the culture really plummeted. And it got to the point, because the culture got so bad, and I will take full responsibility. We've spoken about this before, about extreme ownership. We actually fired 50% of our staff at our busiest month of the year. And you know, I can put my hands up and say it probably started with me, but I was willing to fix it. They weren't. Right. So that's why we had to let them go, and I'm not going to fire myself.
Yeah. So what was it? You heard the podcast. I was sharing about mental fitness and self-sabotage, but what was it for you that hit a chord to have you actually reach out to me?
It's a great question. And the biggest thing for me was, it was just a unique way of looking at mental health, mental fitness. My biggest thing for you was you were looking at ways to be proactive, not ways to be reactive, not ways that, okay, you've had a really bad day or you're having a really hard time, go meditate quickly. It's how do I identify things that are going to sabotage my train of thought, my mindset, my flow, all of those kind of things. How do I identify those things and overcome them before they even happen? And I actually think very early on in the podcast, I may be mistaken here, but I think very early on in the podcast, you said, I'm actually doing something right now, which is helping me focus. And I thought, wow, like even team meetings and things like that, I can start to really lose my focus. And you were able to have a technique that was allowing you to stay present in that moment during something that I would assume would have been causing you a fair bit of pressure and potentially a little bit of anxiety if you're not a typical podcaster or whatever. You were able to stay calm. So that was the big thing for me. We're not looking at ways to, you know, someone that's looking to lose lots of weight. We're not looking to do anything like that or gain loads of muscle. We're just looking at, we're looking to gain muscle. We're not looking to lose the weight.
Right.
In fitness terms.
Yeah. Was there any doubt or hesitation before you actually pulled the trigger to sign up with me? And if so, what was that and what held you back potentially?
I don't know if this is the answer you want, but there really wasn't any hesitation on my behalf, because I felt like at that time when I listened to you, you feel like something's talking to you directly. It's like when you go to church and you feel like the pastor is speaking directly to you, when they're obviously clearly not. That's how it felt with me that day when I listened to that podcast. We were height of summer, I believe. Things were really tough, and I knew that I go to therapy, I read a lot of self-development books, and I knew that I needed something different. I needed something more. I needed a different way of looking at psychology or the mindset. So when it came to speaking with you, I knew pretty much straight away. I also didn't find the financial portion an implication or burden at all. I thought it was really good value. Even before doing it, I thought that.
Yeah. And where are you now? So you've gone through the 8-week programming. I guess my first question would be, how quickly did you notice a change when you first started?
You become a lot more aware instantly. After your first sort of video tutorial, your first meeting with you become very aware very quickly. So I've probably seen changes really start to happen within the first couple of weeks. And more than anyone, there was definitely a couple of blips along the way where I thought, oh, I'm falling way back off the train here. But it's a lot quicker. It's like muscle memory, right? It's a lot quicker to get back on the train when you've got this education. So yeah, I'd say 2 weeks. 2 weeks was where I really started to notice things coming together. And after 4 weeks, I think that's when you guys and people around me could truly notice.
And
Like
what did others notice?
well, I was just about to say my neighbor. He now calls me the neighbor with a spring in his step because honestly, since halfway through this, he even said to me yesterday, he's like, "There he is, spring in his step," and I said, "Do you still feel like I have a spring in my step?" And he's like, "Absolutely, you're totally different from what you were 6 months ago," which was really nice. People made comments about just be more grounded, more present, more at ease. One of my big things is as I'm hyperactive in my mind, even when I'm talking to you, but I can now identify it and slow down. And using the techniques, actually, and we haven't spoke about this, this has just been the last week or so, I actually feel myself like my energy levels coming up and up till I feel like I'm about to explode. And being aware of the hyperachiever and all that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, just slow down. And I tell myself to slow down and my full body feels relaxed. Whereas I used to feel like jittery all the time, like let's go, 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 like after you've had 5 coffees. And now I just feel calm and like I said before we got on this call here, like last night I lay in bed racking my brain about how trying to think of things that were wrong, but there's just nothing wrong.
Right.
So things are great. Things are really good. I
Yeah.
turn my phone off now when we go home. I do use my drive, my hour-long drive to get home, and I use that to really start to dissect. Okay, what's happened today? What's the positives? What do I need to overcome tomorrow? And then by the time I go home, phone goes off, and I can enjoy my life and not just be all about business.
That's great. What other things, like, was there any standout moments for you about how life is different now? Like, just for somebody to kind of ground it in an example. So if somebody's listening, he's like, "Oh, I'm more grounded, I'm more present." That's cool. But like, was there any instances at work or maybe at home that would kind of reveal the change for you?
Yeah, there's one particular moment. I woke up. We were doing a night shift project. So the guys were working from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. Just perfect timing for when I sleep and when I wake up. And one of the mornings after a few days went by, they were working in a public space. It was at a ferry terminal. And I woke up one morning at 6 o'clock to a text message saying, "I'm really sorry that you have to wake up to this, but someone stole our paint last night while we were putting things in the van. They've taken our gallons of paint, they've graffitied all of the storefront windows, they've taken another 2 gallons of paint and thrown it all over the ferry terminal concourse." And I woke up with the photos and it's white, bright white paint, in a public space that maybe sees 10, 15,000 people go through it a day. Of course, before my head would have been going, my brand, everything about it. Didn't care. I was like, you know what, guys, it's fine. We'll fix it. Didn't know how we would fix it. Didn't know when we would fix it. But I just knew it would get fixed. I knew it wasn't the end of the world. I knew it didn't deserve all of my attention. And something like that beforehand would have thrown me off the rails for the whole day. Everything would have went wrong from that point forward. And I would have been like a bull in a china shop after that. I would have just, everything would have been up in the air. And that morning when I woke up to that text message, and I don't even remember, I think I grinned a little bit because after I realized I was so okay with it, I was like, wow, like I actually find this a little bit funny that I'm not losing my mind. That was a defining moment for me. That was really huge. And that means a lot to our guys as well, because You can imagine the phone call 6 months ago to that guy who was giving me that information, our supervisor. Well, now the phone call goes, look, man, don't worry, go to sleep, relax, and enjoy your sleep. We'll chat. But by the time you get up, we'll have thought of a solution. And he was able to continue on and not get on top of himself, which I'm sure had an impact when he went home and spoke to his wife, who was just waking up for work.
It kind of gives me shivers to think of the downstream effects of something. So it just like one little example, but like it's so cool to know that it's impacting other people and how far that goes, and as a leader too, like how much you're role modeling what you want your team to be able to do and how that's impacting your culture and stuff like that. So it's inspiring and it's fun for me to hear. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great. If I think for me, you spoke about the knockdown effect, and maybe that's how it's impacting me and the supervisor, but it goes on and on and on. Like the woman at Starbucks that morning, you know, I was happy and pleasant with her, you know, and then the next people she served, she was happy and pleasant. I interact with probably 7 customers a day, plus 3 or 4 of the staff. So let's say 10 people within the organization or clients of the organization one day. All of those relationships didn't suffer because of what happened that morning, because of this mental fitness that I've been doing.
Yeah. Anything else you'd want to share? I didn't have any other questions, but I'm just going to open up the floor if there's anything that you'd want to share to somebody that might be listening.
Yeah, it's hard. Like there's times where you aren't doing exactly what you should be doing. There's PQ reps and stuff, and I shouldn't say it's hard. It's not hard. If you're disciplined, and you set that 15 minutes aside, a couple hours on the weekend, an hour once a week for your meeting. Like it's not a huge time commitment. Honestly, it's maybe 5 hours a week total. You would know better than I there on that, but you just got to keep going with it. And I would highly recommend doing the pod. I found that we got a lot out of our one-to-one sessions. However, I feel like having the pod has other people in your same situation. When we look at, I know for our pod, for instance, and we never spoke about it, but you can just tell everyone looks up to you, Faith. Like you're like this, you've got it all figured out, right? Of course, that's what we always
Except for
think.
I
don't. That's what we all think, though, right? Like I'm sure the guys that work here think. Well, I hope they would think he's got it all figured out. But of course, we don't have it all figured out. But having people that, yes, you've went through it, you've done years of training and stuff, but having people that are there currently in that moment from all walks of life, however, with one common interest that they want to be better, that makes a huge difference. Because, and I think I voiced to you in the beginning, one of my questions were, are they all entrepreneurs? And you're like, no, but don't worry about that. And I am so grateful that they weren't all entrepreneurs, because I believe that it allowed us to relate as well. So one of the members in our pod or in our group, he was exactly like how my fiance and my business partner are. His personality type, how he handled situations, and I was exactly like how his fiance was. So we were really able to sympathize, understand, and give bits of clarity. How would you like to have dealt with this, so on and so forth. So yeah, that would be my other information that I would like to get across. Do the pod, stick with it. That would be another one last thing. One last thing I would say about the course was I've never felt in such a safe place to fail. And I use that word loosely because there wasn't any term of failure. You couldn't fail. But me being a hyperachiever, you either win or you lose in my world. So failure is very probable. And I never felt like that once, like I was failing. Even when we were doing the moments of meditation and my head was drifting and things like that, I never felt like I was failing.
Thank you.
Thank you.